All right, so yesterday in my video where we talked about that $1 billion in funding for Israel's Iron Dome, we talked about how there was some weird reporting going on the ground that was basically discussing how AOC was apparently crying and pretty shaken up after a conversation with Nancy Pelosi where she actually changed her vote, which was originally against the $1 billion in funding for Israel's Iron Dome. She changed it from a no vote to a present vote after this conversation with Nancy Pelosi. So I want to get into that and actually show you the video of AOC getting pretty emotional. But first, let's just do a quick little recap here. So a couple days ago, in this short-term government funding bill, members of the squad, including AOC, okay, this is important, including AOC, basically led the charge in getting this $1 billion stripped from this short-term funding plan. Now, Nancy Pelosi then proceeded to bring it up for an independent vote, and of course, it ended up passing overwhelmingly. But before that, we also had AOC introduced a cut to the military budget by 10% amendment that actually ended up failing as well. But she was giving a pretty impassioned speech, and I think this is a good reference point to show some of the confusion as to why she would end up basically going against everything that she is about to say in this speech. Let's go ahead and listen to this real quick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, there's a point brought up that this could potentially threaten our readiness, and I would counter that it is not the readiness that cutting our defense budget threatens. It is the profit margins of defense contractors. In fact, almost every major defense contractor here in the United States has had to pay fines or settlements for fraud or misconduct.
All right, so yeah, she's absolutely right? And she's pointing out an important problem with the ways that we are funding not only our military, but militaries across the world, including Israel's. And she was calling out specifically military defense contractors, one of whom is Raytheon. And Raytheon is a U.S. defense contractor that makes billions and billions of dollars a year doing shit like helping Israel with their Iron Dome defense system. So you see here, Raytheon on their own website is taking credit for helping to develop and maintain the Iron Dome system. So if AOC is going to come out and call out these defense contractors, you would think that companies like Raytheon would be included and encompassed within that criticism, and that you wouldn't be supporting or even passively endorsing by voting present the Iron Dome defense system and U.S. dollars going towards that. Now, as I said, eventually it did end up passing by a vote of about 420 to 9, and we had the list of Democrats who actually did ended up opposing it, and clearly there were two pretty big names that were missing here. So the vast majority of the Progressive Caucus voted to give Israel an extra $1 billion in aid for the Iron Dome, and the squad was also not united. Bowman voted yes, and AOC voted present, and the rest voted no. So AOC and Jamal Bowman, what the fuck are y'all doing, okay? I don't know if it's because they're both from New York, and New York has a large pro-Zionist movement, I guess, but AOC and Bowman completely absent from this stand, right? And it was, you know, it was a virtue signaling effort in the end, because obviously it did end up getting passed, but then the question remains is, why is Jamal Bowman and AOC, why do they feel the need to virtue signal for the defense of giving more military aid to a country that is guilty of crimes of apartheid and prosecution, as well as countless war crimes against Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank? Why would they not take this fight like the rest of the squad members? It's just completely inexcusable. But now we get to the interesting part, right? So there was this conversation with Nancy Pelosi and AOC that took place on the House floor, and I'm going to play a little bit of it here. And you can kind of see Nancy Pelosi and AOC are down here in the left-hand corner, and they're having a long conversation. It is minutes long, and I can even skip around here because they are literally talking here for minutes and minutes and minutes. Nancy Pelosi waving her arms around. She's getting all hyped up about something. We don't know what it is. Obviously, we don't have the audio recording from this, but we do have the visual recording, and you can see AOC as well as other members of Congress, not sure who these people are, but Nancy Pelosi giving an impassioned speech here to AOC. Who knows? Is she threatening her? Is she threatening her committee assignments? Is she threatening her to help redraw her district? What is she doing right here? Because now, as you can see, after AOC initially voted against this $1 billion in funding, now she's standing and waving her arms around and telling the people who are counting the votes, no, I want to change my vote. And then later in this second clip, we see that AOC actually did end up going to this little podium over here. And again, as she's surrounded by multiple members of Congress here, right? I don't know, it's hard to tell because they're very blurry, but you can see then that she ends up going over to the podium, and we'll see here in a second. I can't remember which portion it was at, but you see here, yeah, there she is. So she's going up to this podium here, and then she ends up changing her vote and picks up one of these cards and delivers it to these members to then go and change her vote, right? So it's weird that AOC would initially vote no on this and then would go over and feel the need to go and change her vote after this weird conversation with Nancy Pelosi. And so the question remains, what was that conversation about, right? What was AOC talking to Nancy Pelosi about that she would feel a need to go and change her vote that she had already cast? Again, importantly, this was just virtue signaling, okay? And so it wasn't like Nancy Pelosi needed AOC's vote for this thing to pass, okay? It wasn't anything like that. And it's weird that Nancy Pelosi would be having this deep and heavy of a conversation to get AOC to change her vote, but not have that same conversation with Ayanna Pressley or Rashida Tlaib or Cori Bush. Why is AOC being so whipped by Nancy Pelosi to the point where not only will she change her vote, but she is literally crying on the House floor? I mean, if it is that emotionally disturbing for you, and I have another clip here just to give you a perspective. So you can see here, she basically walks up to Barbara Lee here, and she's giving Barbara Lee a hug, and she's talking to her, and she's obviously clearly emotional, and there were multiple reports of her crying. But the question is, if this is something that is so emotional and so difficult for you to cast a vote on in this way, why are you doing it? What the fuck could Nancy Pelosi possibly have on you where you feel the need to go and do this and completely go against your entire morals that you have been setting out for yourself and that you claim to have? There's no excuse. And on top of that, I just think it's weak for any politician in really any context to take this neutral position of you're not saying no, you're not saying yeah, you're not really letting people know where you're at. You're just voting present as a pure cop-out. I mean, your real position in this is voting yes because you are not opposing it, right? And those who don't take a stand against evil when they have the chance to, then you're being complicit in that. And so I think this is completely ridiculous. I don't know what Nancy Pelosi was saying to AOC, but I really want to find out. And so go ahead and tell me in the comments below, what do you guys think this was? What do you think Nancy Pelosi was saying to AOC? Was it something about her redistricting in New York? Was it something about threatening to run a primary against her? Who the fuck knows? Removing committee assignments? I don't really know what it is, but clearly Nancy Pelosi has some leverage over AOC to the point where she can even make her cry on the House floor with a vote like this and get AOC to completely change her mind and flip her own vote.